Hi everyone, Jen Bulava here to share some recent sightings of spring with you. It's important to get outside in the fresh air and look around for interesting things that are happening right now. Here's some pictures I took this month of March. With the warm temperatures, spring has definitely arrived earlier this year. I decided to start with the eastern comma. The eastern comma is a beautiful butterfly that overwinters as an adult under tree bark mostly in the woods, and it's named for the strange punctuation mark on the side of its wing. It looks like a comma. I've seen quite a few commas this March, and they often will land and sun themselves with their wings open, as you see here. I've seen several of them this March. Next we have a very unusual moth that I saw for the first time on March 9th at Rancocas State Park in Hainesport. It's called an infant moth, and it's named because it's the very first moth to emerge in the springtime of the geometrid family of moths, which are the moths that have what we call inchworms as caterpillars that look like they measure the earth as they move. So this is the very first moth of the geometrid family to emerge in the spring, and that's why they call it the infant moth. And here you can see it sunning itself on the gravel. The cabbage white butterfly is by far the most common white butterfly that we see in our area. It's seen flying from spring through late fall. It's one of only two non-native species of butterflies in all of North America. It's actually native to Europe. The caterpillars eat cabbage, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, all kinds of crops in the mustard family. The cabbage white overwinters as pupae, so they're ready to emerge on the first warm days of spring. So I started seeing them as of March 18th, and they're abundant now in all of the parks. This is the Falcate orangetip. It's a small white native butterfly that only flies in the spring. Usually that means mid-April to early May. This one, seen on the left, is the earliest Falcate orangetip I've ever recorded, which was March 26th. The males have orange tips on their wings, which you see here. The females do not have the orange tips. They're smaller than cabbage whites, and they have this mottled pattern on the underside of their hind wing. Next we have the painted turtle. The painted turtles were very happy earlier this month, and it was very warm out and they could sun themselves on the logs. The pictures you see here are from Boundary Creek in Morristown. Lots of happy turtles sunning themselves, having been under the water and the mud for the whole winter. One of the most significant things that happens in March is the movement of thousands of individual migratory waterfowl as they start making their way north to their breeding grounds in Canada. Here we can see very large flocks of snow geese. These pictures were taken at Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge. I've counted at least 700 to 1,000 at a time as they pass through our area. One of my favorite species of waterfowl that I only really get to see in March are the Canvasbacks. These are migratory waterfowl that only pass through our area, usually in the first half of March. You'll see them either along the Delaware River or along the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. And the males have this incredible rusty red head, the white back, and the females are browner. And I got to see a really nice large flock of them this March at Forsyth. There's certainly many other species of migratory waterfowl that are very busy right now. Just a few pictured here. You can see the hooded merganser male a pair of northern pintail, a male northern shoveler, and one male and two female common mergansers. Those were photographed on Smithville Lake earlier this month. Great blue herons are the only wading bird that is resident in New Jersey. All of the other wading birds migrate south in the winter. Great blue herons are solitary birds, except for when they're nesting. In March, the great blue herons will nest in a large colony known as a rookery or heronry. The great blue herons that live on the western side of Burlington County and the vicinity of Philadelphia have a rookery on a small island in the middle of Dredge Harbor, and the rookery is visible from Amico Island's south overlooks and is active between March and June. The best time to see the nesting activity is between March and April, when the leaves are not on the trees. Once the leaves appear, they kind of block your view of the nests. There's normally about 50 great blue heron nests, as well as double-crested cormorants and great egrets that arrive as well. Eastern bluebirds have been very active this spring, and they have been seen in most of the local parks in our area, picking out their nest boxes. Very, very active. Here you can see a male on a nest box. Tree swallows can also be seen at this time of year and often use the same nest boxes as the bluebirds. They catch flying insects right out of the air. They return to our area in early spring and will stay here until October. This is a good time of the year to listen for the eastern phoebe. It's a migratory songbird that returns in March every year and stays until the end of the fall. This is the first of the insect-eating birds to return to our area. They say their name Phoebe over and over and over again. You can listen for them usually near any kind of water body in our parks. Phoebes are flycatchers, which is a family of birds that catch flying insects right out of the air and then come back to a perch to eat them. And this is just a gray squirrel that I photographed eating a walnut that it found. I thought it was kind of cute. These are interesting little wildflowers that kind of creep over the surface of the ground. They're called small bluets. These should not be confused with the big bluets, which appear later in the spring and have a more yellow center. The small bluet is much closer to the ground, has more red near the center. Spring beauty is a gorgeous native wildflower with 5 petals that can be white or light pink, and pink streaks on the petals and even pink pollen. The leaves are narrow and grass-like, and it's a common low-growing plant in springtime in forested areas. It blooms from the end of March until April. Once the plant has been pollinated and it has set seed, the entire plant above the ground disappears until next spring, storing all of its energy in underground portions of the plant. This is an example of a true spring ephemeral. If you're looking in fields or lawn type areas right now, you might see some of these non-native weedy species. These are examples of different kinds of speedwells, which have 4 petals with various stripes. They can be blue or white. If you look out over a large field at this time of year, you're likely to see mats of purple. These are European mints that can be invasive. The most common species is purple dead nettle, which is kind of a bad name since it's not dead or a nettle. These have purple flowers with heart-shaped leaves that also turn purple in color. Now, henbit, which you can see here, has very similar looking flowers, but the leaves are different. They're rounded, whorled, and scalloped on the edges. Ground ivy, which is also known as gill over the ground, is slightly more violet in color and creeps right over the surface of the ground with scalloped type leaves. All three of these species bloom in early spring, have square stems, and are all mints native to Europe. And of course we have our red maples blooming in March. These are really gorgeous flowers if you look at them up close. Red maples have separate male and female flowers, normally on different trees. The ones you see in this picture are male flowers, which have only pollen. The bees that are out at this time of year will carry the pollen to that of a female flower, which will accept the pollen. The female flowers are darker red than the male flowers and have no yellow. If the flowers are pollinated successfully, then we will see bright red seeds on the female trees later in the month. These are called samaras and fall from the trees on the wind like little helicopters. Red maples can be found along most of our local waterways and wetlands. Even though we cannot continue with our normal day-to-day routine right now, it's comforting to know that all the animals and plants are continuing to go about their lives. I hope you enjoyed this slideshow and will be inspired to look for interesting things around where you live. Thank you for watching.